Good morning. I'm Dr. Dean Kroeker, and I'm serving here at Central as the Vice President of Advancement. And it's an honor for me today to share kind of what Jesus has done in my life and what he's continuing to do in my life. So I'd like to open with a passage out of Psalms that's really special to me. All of you probably have this memorized, or certainly you've heard it before. But it's Psalms 139, and I'll start reading in verse 13. For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My name was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place. When I was woven together in the depths of the earth, your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days were ordained for me and were written in your book before one of them ever came to be. How precious to me are your thoughts, O God. How vast is the sum of them. Were I to count them, they would be like the number of grains in the sand. Let's pray. Father, I just thank you so much for loving us. You loved us while we were in our mother's belly. And you formed us to be exactly the person that we are today. And Lord, as I share for a few moments here this morning, I just pray that those listening, that somehow Holy Spirit talk to them, minister to them. This is a time where there's a lot of pressure, a lot of loneliness, a lot of hurt, and a lot of self-judgment. Lord, I just pray that the words that I speak be pleasing to you. Take me out of this conversation and just manifest yourself to those that are watching. So do your work, whatever that is, Father. And in advance, I say thank you, Jesus, for what you have planned for the next few minutes. And I pray this in your name. Amen. I'd like to share with you just a little bit about who I am. Not just what am I doing here at Central, and I've already said that, but I grew up in a farm here in Kansas. Matter of fact, just about 10 miles from McPherson. It was a poor farm. My dad had asthma really, really bad, and most of the money that he made from cattle, sheep, hogs, farming, most of it went to pay for medical bills. So we were considered poor. We had a poor farm. I grew up not being able to go to a store to buy anything new. We had everything used, all the way from our clothes to our farm equipment. Everything was used, or my dad had an incredible gift of making things. So if he needed equipment for the farm, he would make it because we didn't have money to go out and buy it. Well, little did I know that this psalm was already in place as I was a little boy growing up. So fast forward, I moved to California, to Los Angeles area, which is quite different than Inman, Kansas. And while there, I met this wonderful, wonderful lady. And 5 weeks after meeting her, we were married. And we were on our way to Denver, Colorado, where I had accepted a job of managing a rental company for Fruhoff trailers. Those great big semi-trailers that you see rolling up and down the roads. They had a division called Rentco. And the branch in Denver was needing a new administrator. The guy that had been there had embezzled a bunch of money, and they were deciding, should we close it or should we try one more time? So the decision was made, let's try one more time, and let's ask Dean if he'd be willing to go. Well, I had just met this wonderful lady, Betty, and I said, well, I'm not going alone. And so we got married, and we moved to Denver. And that's where our story began. Actually, Jesus wasn't very important to us, both of us at that point, at all. We knew him. I grew up in a very, very religious home. I'd gone to Bible school, but I didn't have a relationship with the Lord at all. Betty was a brand new Christian. She had just accepted the Lord before we left, actually Long Beach. She was living in Long Beach. And so we moved to Denver, and that's where our life really changed. I was sharing with a coworker just the other day, I think I've had 4 life terms. I grew up, on a farm. Went to Los Angeles, worked in business, worked in sales, and then moved to Denver and kind of continued that. Then joined a mission organization, and I'll tell you about that here in just a little bit. And then came back to the States, and we started a nonprofit counseling center, and then moved back to Kansas to work at a Christian college. So I feel like I've been all over the place, and yet I'm the same person I was when I was born. So if any of you are really suffering or really stressed today, and you've used this phrase, I don't know if it's God's will. Oh, my friend, I hope that after hearing these little stories that I want to share, I hope that phrase no longer pertains to your decision making. My wife often said, she got really upset when people said they didn't know if it was God's will or not. She would often say, hey, look, God didn't hide his will under a rock somewhere, and he's expecting you to go hunt it and find it. She said, all you need to do is go to the drugstore and buy a mirror and look in the mirror and see who God made when he made you, and that is his will. I like that. It's so simple, and yet it's so profound. And that happened to us. And I share all that because our journey as missionaries started when we were in Denver, Colorado. I was in sales. I was administrating this branch. And by the way, I was having a lot of fun. We were making a lot of money. Betty was in a nursing program. She had already received her RN, but was getting her first master's. I say first. She actually ended up having 2 masters and 3 doctorates, or 2 doctorates, and she was going after her third when she passed away 9 years ago. So she loved to learn. She was just a lifelong learner, truly a lifelong learner. So we were living in the Denver area, actually living in Parker, and we were learning how to be married. We were like 2 raging rivers coming together because we didn't really know each other. We do on a surface, but not very deep. And it was kind of a stressful time. And something happened during this time that changed our lives. I remember I had an unlimited expense account. I could take customers out for lunch or dinner or entertain them anything I wanted because we were making money. And at that point, we were making a lot of money. The branch in Denver was really doing well. I was outselling some of the big markets like in Milwaukee and almost outsold Chicago. And I was having a grand time. And I was getting bored. And I found a hog farm just outside of the Denver area that, man, I love pigs. I just do. I grew up, with hogs. That was part of the income that I used to go to school. And I just loved to be with them. So rather than taking a client out to lunch, I'd go out to the hog farm. And I'd eat, had picked up a sandwich or something. And I'd just sit there, and often I wouldn't even get out of the car. I'd just sit there and just enjoy being with the hogs. And I'd get home, and I wouldn't share anything. I'd walk in the house, and Betty would go, "You've been with that hog farm again, haven't you?" And I said, "Yeah." "How can you tell?" She said, "I can smell it." Some people think hogs stink. They don't. They really don't. And so as I was getting more and more and more connected and almost obsessed with hogs, at the same time, Betty was going through kind of a transition herself, and she was getting so incredibly interested in Indians. If there was a movie that even had an Indian word in it, we had to go see it. She'd go to the library, she'd pick up any book she could find that had to do with Indians. And I'm going, whoa, I don't want to live on a reservation. I want to buy a hog farm. And I found one. I found one in eastern Kansas. And I was really wanting to buy this hog farm. And she's saying, "Dean, I don't want to live with pigs." And it was really causing us stress in our marriage. And I remember, I could take you to the intersection in Denver. We were on our way to church. We were stopped at a red light. And I prayed, "Father, somehow today, during the worship service, would you talk to us? Would you tell us do you want us to have a hog farm? Do you want us to go and live in eastern Kansas? Or do you want us to work with Indians? And it was almost like, I'm afraid to even say those words. And the light turned green. We went to church. It was a stressful last 5 miles or whatever it was from the church, because I was afraid. I was afraid the Lord would talk to us that Sunday morning and it'd have something to do with Indians. And I'd lose my dream of wanting to be with the hogs. Well, it was a large church. I won't name the church, but it was a large church in Denver. And the service was on TV. And after the service was over, nothing had been said about pigs or Indians. Nothing. But there was an announcement that I didn't connect the dots, but there was an announcement after the service that this gal was there. She was a missionary, and she was there to dedicate an airplane that people had raised funds to buy for them to use, excuse me, in Brazil. So that had nothing to do with Indians or hogs, and I was scheduled to go to Salt Lake City. I had a branch that I started in Salt Lake City, and I was going to do a sales presentation the very next day, Monday, in Salt Lake. That same Monday, there was also a ladies' luncheon that Betty had bought tickets for that she was going to attend. She had no idea who the speaker was. But at this luncheon, this gal started talking, and she started using phrases like tribes and translations. And she was getting pretty excited. Tribes, Indians, a little connection. So before they were finished with the lunch meal, Betty got up from the table she was sitting, and she went over to this missionary, and she introduced herself, and she said, I need to ask you a question. And she said, will you promise not to laugh? And the gal said, yeah, sure, ask. She said, you're talking about tribes, and you're talking about Brazil. Do you by any chance need anyone to come to Brazil that loves pigs? And she goes, whoa, we've been praying for 5 years for someone to come and work with us in Brazil that loved hogs. You guys, God created me when I was in my mother's belly to love pigs. That was now becoming kind of a transition for us to move into a whole new life of missions. She called me. I was in the middle of making this sales presentation in Utah. And she called the hotel where I was working and asked for me to come and take a telephone call. Well, that upset me. Don't interrupt me when I'm making a sales presentation, you know. On the other hand, they kept saying it's your wife that's trying to reach you. And I thought, whoa, maybe something is wrong. Maybe I better take a little break here and go answer the phone. And she called and she told me this little story. And I said, Betty, find out who they are working with. Who's this Wycliffe? Find out, we're on our way. I didn't ask any questions. If you know me, you know that I kind of like to make decisions like that. That's kind of how I live. And so we found out that Wycliffe was headquartered in Huntington Beach, California, and that, yes, they work with tribes and translations. Their whole mission is to translate the scriptures into unwritten languages. So they send in teams to learn the language, script it because it's never been scripted, and while this process is going on, teaching them how to read and write their own language. What a connection. Here comes this couple where the wife just really wants to be with Indians and the husband really wants to be with pigs. Weird connection. But that's one of the reasons why, and you'll see the book here beside me, that's one of the reasons why I wrote this book. It's just a group of stories, a group of experiences that we experienced while we were in Brazil. And while she was still alive, our kids kept saying, Dad, Mom, why don't you just record some of the experiences that we had? Because they grew up in the jungle. To them, it was just normal life. But to some of us here in the States, that's not the same kind of normal life. We never got around to it. And then she passed away, and then the kids got pretty insistent, Dad, you've got to write this book. You've got to record some of these stories because you won't be around forever. So I tried to do that. And dear friends, I'll tell you what, I couldn't do it. I'd start remembering these different examples, these different experiences that we had, and I just break down and cry because all of them were us. It was we, and I missed her so dearly. And so I'd go camping. I did a lot of this at campsites. Camping is really it's kind of a spiritual experience for me. And I go to the different lakes here in Kansas. And I get in my little camper and I try to write, and I just couldn't do it. 7 years later, this book was finally finished, and it's available. If you want to buy it, it's available and there's an instruction, kind of a link that will be provided for you, or you can go to Barnes and Nobles, or you can go to Amazon or other bookstores. It's just titled "In the Land of Pigs and Indians," and it's just a group of different examples that we've had in the country of Brazil. And so let me share one of those with you. It is in the book. I won't go into the details. We don't have time to do that here in this little devotional. But it's an example of kind of how the Lord connected these, what I call in God-given skills, God-given likes and dislikes that were developed while we were in our mother's womb. We were working in Brazil. We were working with 5 different language groups, 5 different tribes, all speaking their own language. Culture is totally different one to another. And my wife, as I stated earlier, she had her degree in medicine, and so she was really, really busy treating sick. I had my business background, my agricultural background, and I was trying to help the different tribes. We worked with 5 different tribes, trying to help them to live a healthier life. You see, in the jungle, it's tough. Malaria is out of control, and people are hurting. And so we were trying to introduce some crops, some food sources that they could just really survive on, and give them some medical help and teach them how to care for their own. And we were busy. And then one day, I'll never forget, one day the government doctor came out to where we were living and asked Betty, would you be willing to go out to the Deni tribe? The Deni is kind of their identification. They're dying of yellow fever, and we need to provide a vaccine for all of them, adults, children, babies, everyone. Well, of course, she didn't need but about 3 seconds to make that decision. And so I came with her, and so we had Betty, the government doctor, the pilot, and I, and we got in this little Cessna that had been dedicated in Denver, Colorado, the weekend that God called us. And we flew out to the Deni. It was a long flight. These Cessnas, they fly pretty fast, but I think if I remember right, it was about a 3.5-hour flight to the tribe. And we landed, and it's kind of a scary land because in the jungle, there's not a whole lot of flat ground. You see pictures and it all looks flat, but it's really not. And so this airstrip is really narrow. I don't remember exactly how many feet, but there weren't a whole lot of extra feet on the other side of the wingtips. And it was very short, and the last few feet of that runway was on a 25-degree incline, which helped us slow down. But it was weird to take off. I mean, you're just kind of, it feels like you're flying right into the ground. Anyhow, we flew out to this tribe, and sure enough, the Deni were hurting. Oh, they were weeping. Mothers were burying their little babies. It was just a sad time. And we spent 2 days vaccinating all of the Deni. Now, they don't all live in the same area. They're the same tribe, the same language group. But they're not all living in that same little location. So they would come. Many of them had hiked because they knew that we had sent word in that the doctor and the nurse was coming. So they made a tremendous effort because they didn't want to die. They wanted to see their family healed. And so we worked 2 days vaccinating everyone. And we were getting ready to leave. And the chief walks up to me. I had built kind of a little relationship with him. We were talking as best as we could. I couldn't speak Deni, and he could barely speak Portuguese. I was trying to speak Portuguese. It probably was a funny experience if you heard us talking, probably like first grade language. But he says, Gino, they call me Gino. Gino, our last male hog died. Would you bring us a male hog? And I'm going, yeah. I don't have a male hog, but I'll get one. And so we left, and I was happy. Betty was happy, and the doctor was happy. We were just a happy bunch getting back into that plane as we flew back to our center. Well, I obtained a male hog, a good-looking male hog. And I'm thinking, okay, how are we going to get this pig in a 3.5-hour flight to a jungle location without it messing up the airplane? And so and remember, Betty doesn't like pigs, and she thinks they stink. Okay, so I built this box, and I wish I could show you a picture of it. I built this box out of plywood, heavy plywood, because this hog it's not a small hog. It probably weighs 250 pounds. So I built it so that it was real small, so that it would contain this hog so it couldn't move around a whole lot. I thought, no, wait a minute. This flight is a long flight. That hog will probably go to the bathroom at least twice while we're in this airplane. So I put in a metal bottom. I took some tin and created a metal bottom to this box. And Betty, God bless her, she took this box and she painted flowers on the side of it because she was going to be sitting right beside it inside the Cessna 206. Oh, it's just kind of fun to think about that. What a woman. I mean, she just was willing to do that because she knew how important it was to me and how important it was to the Indians. So I got this pig in there, and we took off. And you guys, it's hot in the jungle. I mean, it's hot. We took off from the airport in Puerto Velho. That's the town that we lived out of. And we got this pig inside the plane. Betty had to get in first, and we put in the pig, so there's no way for her to get out. And we got in this plane, we took off, and that hog was restless because it was hot. And not only was it hot, it was, he was in this tight box. And we get up to about 3,000, 4,000 feet, and it's a lot cooler up there, and it was great. Then we were preparing to land at the Denis. And remember I said this is a short runway. It's very narrow. And we're going down, and this hog is thrashing around inside this box. I thought it was tight. That hog found a way to wiggle and move, and it was bad, and it was starting to really impact the flight. And we were coming in for landing, and the pilot, he said, Dean! All he kept saying is Dean, as if it was my fault. He says, Dean! And he finally aborted. He says, we can't land. This thing I can't keep it in the center of the runway. We can't land. I said, John, please. He was ready to go right back to the city. I said, please, give it one more shot. Let's do it one more time. And the Indians were already out. They knew our plane. They could hear our plane. By the way, when you're in the jungle, you can hear a plane for miles and miles and miles because there's not interference with sound. It's quiet in the jungle. You hear animals, you hear birds, you hear things like that. There's no traffic. There's no trains. There's none of that noise. And you could hear these planes coming. Well, they were all running out to the airstrip because they knew, the American was coming. And we circled around that airstrip again. And I'm praying, Father, calm that crazy pig down. Let us land, and let us land safely. And we came down, and you guys, that was a test of faith. I don't know how close that wingtip was to the tree, but I don't think it was more than a foot. I mean, we were just kind of all over the place. We used every bit of that incline to slow us down. And we got out, and we, did our little greetings. They have greetings different than we have here in the States. There's no handshaking. There's just kind of a tonal sound that you make, and we said our hellos, and then we pulled this box out that had these flowers on it, and they looking, what in the world is Gino bringing? And so I opened the lid, and here's this male hog. And they were, woo! They were just yelling and screaming and clapping. They were just so happy. And we spent about 3 days with them just building relationships because we knew that we were probably going to go back and spend some time, actually live there for a number of months in the future. So I was trying to build a relationship with them. And it was a great visit. Great visit. We had left our children. There was no room for them in the plane, so we left the children back at the city. And we just had a really wonderful time of connecting with them. And I'll never forget, you guys, I'll never forget. We got back into that plane. The hog was running free. They don't have pens. They don't have corrals. They don't have any containment for their animals. They wanted the hogs because the hogs protect them. The hogs kill snakes. And it was a snake that had killed their last male hog. So it's there. We kind of use dogs sometimes to protect us, but at that particular place, they use hogs. And so we were in our plane, ready to take off. The pilot was going through his pre-flight checks, and they have their little sequence they go through. And the chief, he very slowly and deliberately walks up to the plane, and I could tell he wants to say something. And I hadn't closed the door yet. And he walks up and he kind of gets real close to me. Space is different in some of these different cultures. You get right in somebody's face, doesn't mean anything negative. Here in the States, if I get within 6 inches of your face, that's not a good thing. But theirs, it's rather common. He gets right in my face. He says, "Gino, because you brought that hog, now I know you care for my people." I'm thinking, wow. We had just been there. We had just vaccinated all of your people for yellow fever. And you didn't receive that as cure until we brought the hog. Psalms 139 came alive. What an honor. What an honor that he would ask us with this weird kind of out of the box desire. People told us that we needed counseling. Something is wrong with you, Dean, if you just want to be with hogs. Something is wrong with you. No, to this day, I still love pigs. It's really a spiritual connection for me. And they love me, which kind of became an issue. I won't go to this. I have a story of that in the book. But at another tribe, at another location, they also had hogs. That was quite common. The Indians would often have hogs. They just wanted to be with me. And it was kind of like here in the States, some of you may have cats that just want to be with you, or dogs that just really want to be with. Pigs are that connected to me. And they would want to sleep under our house. And it was bad because they passed gas at night. And we don't have houses like we have here in the States, just thatched, split palm floors. And it'd be bad. I remember one place, their kids were little, and they'd wake up and they'd cry because the stench was so bad. And I would try to build barriers so they couldn't get under the house. And they would break the barriers. They just wanted to be with me as if there was something going on. Or if we'd land, if we'd go to another tribe, and the hogs would somehow know that I was in that plane, and they'd run out to the airstrip, and it was dangerous. You don't want a pig running out as you're coming in for a land. So all that to say is, man, God connects us with saying, if you're feeling like what you like is weird, if people tell you there's something wrong, you need to get some counseling, you guys, allow the Lord to love you because of who He made. You are who He wants you to be. And that's His will for you. I'm thinking of just one more example. Different tribe, different culture. Everything is different. And by the way, this tribe doesn't have hogs. So it was kind of a lonely place for me. No, I'm kidding. But this tribe, they have a lot of uniqueness. Their language is tonal. So if you're just listening to them, they have a lot of community talk at night as the sun is setting. It just sounds like they're singing. It's a very difficult language to learn because it doesn't have pronounced words like we have in English or Portuguese or Spanish or some of these other languages. It's very tonal. And this tribe probably was one of the five, but it was probably one where the demons were really in control. I mean, it was satanic. It was brutal. It was hard. We just felt attacked on a daily, day and night. It was just really difficult. But we loved them. We loved the people. And then we were not translators. The translators assigned to this group. It was called the Mudapita. That's a fun word to say, Mudapita. And there was a translation group that was working with them. It was actually the third family that was working with them. I think perhaps because of the demonic power over there, the missionaries just get burned out. And so the couple was there. I won't name their names, but they're from Southern California. And we knew them. We had become really, really close friends. And one day, we were back at the city, and one day the husband came running up to our house, and he says, "We need your help. Betty, we need your help. My wife is down at the river. She's dying from malaria." So Betty just ran down there, and sure enough, this gal she was in a coma. She was in bad shape. And we rushed her to the city, to the hospital, and she got her care. And Dan was this guy's name. Dan says, "Dean, would you mind going back out to the village?" We didn't even close. We just left in a hurry. We took all of our food. We took all of our possessions. We took them to a Brazilian that was just up the river, maybe about an hour. And we just put it in his storage shed. I locked it up. And would you go and just help us kind of close up? And by the way, if you would please, could you take a bunch of machetes and have the Indians help you and clear the airstrip so we can fly in, so we don't have to go on the river? Because traveling on the river, that's tough. If you've seen pictures of Brazilian rivers, well, jungle rivers, that's kind of like a snake. It just goes back and forth, and you travel a whole day and you didn't really progress very far. But you have worked pretty hard. So we said, sure. Again, we don't take a whole lot of time to make decisions. So Betty just took whatever food we had in the refrigerator, dumped it into a sheet, tied the sheet, and we went down the river. You don't buy tickets to get on the boat. You just flag the boat down, and they'll pull over and pick you up. And we started the journey to go to the Mudapita village. Took us 3 days and 4 nights to get there. We'd taken our kids with us this time because, again, the plan was that we'll go there and we'll build relationships with the Pitaha, and we'll clean the airstrip. And we already set a date for the plane to come and pick us up. So we had a due date. We had timeline, but I thought I had a very generous timeline. Surely we can do this. So I bought 10 machetes, and we left. We got there, and the Indians were really concerned. Is this gal okay? Is she going to live? And we said, well, when we left, she was in the hospital. Yes, she's really, really sick. But yes, she's regaining some strength. Yes, we really think that the Lord is going to heal her. Of course, they don't know anything about a relationship with the Lord. There's no at that time, there were no believers at this location. So I decided, well, we'd been there. We got there kind of mid-afternoon. I have time before the sunset. I have time to jump in the canoe and go over and pick up the food and stuff that the couple had left, and have plenty of time to get back before it gets dark. See, in the jungle, when it gets dark, it's dark. I mean, it doesn't seem to be any twilight. It just, boom, just like that. It's dark, and the same thing at sunrise. So I went down to the Brazilian's house where he had stored all of their food and possessions and stuff. And I climb up out of the river, climb up on this muddy bank. And I saw something that just, boy, it took the wind right out of me. The little shack that Dan had placed all of their stuff had the door ripped off. And I knew what we were going to find. Everything had been stolen. All that was left was a little bottle of mayonnaise that had never been opened and a little container of mustard. That's all. We had what little leftover we had in the fridge that Betty had put into a sheet, we had that with us. But the Indians, at this particular time, the Indians were not catching any fish. They weren't able to hunt anything. They were hungry. Hungry. That's probably why the food was stolen. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, mayonnaise and mustard is not very comforting to me at this point. Our leftovers were pretty measly. Probably would only give us maybe a meal or two. We have no radio contact with the outside. Remember, it took us 3 days and 4 nights to get there. So we're stuck. And there's very little river traffic out in the tribal area. On the big rivers, there's more, but not when you get into the tributaries. There's very, very little. And we're stuck. And I had an opportunity to trust God at a different level than I had ever experienced before. And we prayed. And we sit there at night, or lay there at night in our hammocks, trying to fight off the mosquitoes, listening to the Pitoha kind of talk. And like I said, it sounded like they were singing. A lot of it was crying because they were hungry. They were hungry. Guys had gone out to fish, came back with nothing. Some guys had gone out to hunt, came back with nothing. We had run out of food. And our kids, our little kids were now crying. Dad, I'm hungry. Can I have something to eat? I don't have anything for you to eat. I'm so sorry. God is going to have to provide. And nothing happened. Nothing was changing. Days, several days went by. We were getting weak. We're supposed to be clearing an airstrip, and we don't have the energy to hardly lift the machete, let alone go out there and cut. The Indians were hungry. They were getting sick. And I remember just having this breakthrough. Nothing had changed, and yet there's victory. God is going to answer. And it was just kind of like a deep conviction, but nothing would prove, physically, nothing would prove that something was going on. But something did happen. They started to catch fish. Little ones, but it was something to eat. And oh, they were so happy. But it was also amazing. Those first few fish that they caught, they wanted to share them with us. And their families were hurting. And so we built a connection with them that was really profound. And they would catch bigger fish. And they caught a tapir, which is kind of like it looks like a pig in a way. It's a large animal, and it was enough to feed everybody. And we had a full meal because, again, there's no electricity in the tribe, so there's no way to preserve food. So what you catch today, you eat today, because tomorrow it'll be spoiled. So we just kind of had a feast. And for us, it was God has answered our prayer. And I know people were praying. I know the Holy Spirit talks to people all the time, and miles mean nothing. But I know they were praying in Denver, and in Long Beach, and in Huntington Beach. I know they were, but they had no idea what was really going on in our lives. And they were catching fish more than they needed. And we went out, we cut out the airstrip. We'd cut early morning until maybe around 11, 12 o'clock, and we'd break because it's just too hot. And we'd go out again about 4 or 5 in the afternoon and cut till it got dark. And we were making tremendous progress clearing an airstrip. And you know what was happening with the fish, the food issue? They had so many fish, they were hanging them in trees to dry. You know, it's kind of like the 5 loaves and fish that Jesus just kind of multiplied right in front of everybody. It was happening in front of us, right in front of our eyes. And the fish that they were hanging in the trees weren't spoiling. And they didn't have salt. It was a miracle in real time, just right there in front of us. And I remember that time when the strip was finally cleared. And there's more details to that process itself in the book. But when that plane was arriving, I could hear from Moz, it was just like, I could hardly wait to tell someone in my own language, in English language, what God had just done with the Murupiraha. And he used us in that process. You guys, I just talking about this just really touches me again. Why do I get so concerned? Why do I get so depressed when not everything is going my way? When it just seems like, God, you're not listening to me. I'm crying out and yet you're not coming back. Oh, he will. He will. I promise you he will. I've been there. I've seen it. I've experienced it. I've eaten of his blessing. I don't like fish, but oh, I enjoy those fish. Oh, they tasted better than any fish I've ever eaten since. But it was just such a dramatic manifestation to us of God's incredible power and God's incredible desire for us to trust him. Oh, friends, wherever you are today, give him the opportunity to demonstrate how much he loves you, how much he cares for you, and how much your likes and your dislikes so closely match with what he wants you to do and where he wants you to be and how he wants you to interact with others. That's my prayer. Expect God to do some miracles in your life, and he will. He'll show up. God bless you.